Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Dennis Stedman, and welcome to the Lower Makefield Township Patterson Farm Master Plan Implementation Committee. We probably have the longest committee name of any committee in Lower Makefield, and we have that going for us. This is our first meeting, the inaugural meeting of this committee that was just recently formed, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. And let me share my screen and share the meeting agenda. Is that visible to
Yes.
to everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Good. Thank you. So as I say, it's our first meeting, and I thought before we get into any other business, we should do introductions of this committee and the two township guests we have on with us this evening. I'll start that off. Dennis Stedman. I've been a resident of Lower Makefield Township for 35 years, and grew up on a Pennsylvania farm, familiar with farming issues, and educated at Penn State with a major in agricultural economics. Spent most of my career in agribusiness related fields, and most recently in the veterinary and animal health business. But I served as chairperson of the Patterson Farm Master Plan Committee, ad hoc property committee, and that master plan was delivered to the Board of Supervisors this past year by the end of 23, and this committee is about implementing that. So we have a number of members on the implementation committee from the master plan creation committee, and we'll say more about that in a moment. So I'm pleased to be here. I'm the acting chair since I was chair of the ad hoc committee, and one of the items, as you can see on the agenda, is nomination and election of officers, which we'll get to later. But to continue with the introductions, who would like to go next? On my screen, Peter, you're at the top, so why don't you jump in?
All right. Well, apparently I'm the one new member of this process here. I've been in Lower Makefield Township 18 years. My bachelor's degree is from University of Wisconsin-Madison in civil engineering. I've also been trade skilled as a carpenter. What I've been doing the last 20 years is I worked as a project manager for a GC that did a lot of historic work in this area and nationally. And in addition, about 3 years ago, I went from working for the general contractor side to being an owner's representative as construction manager for the federal government. And right now I'm down at Independence National Historic Park, representing the federal government for projects there. I've been with on two of the boards for Lower Makefield Township in the past, Environmental Advisory Committee, and for the last 5 years I've been on Zoning Hearing Board, where I'm the chairman.
Sorry,
So, an extra participant.
I'm trying to mute. Hang on a second.
So I have a lot of experience with the construction side of things and some experience with the planning side of things. I've worked not only at Independence, but at Washington Crossing State Park, Pennsbury Manor, and an assortment of other local, state, and federal parks in the area, and like I said, national.
Very good. Thank you, Peter. Welcome aboard, and I appreciate your volunteering to serve on this committee. Ron Schmid, you're next on at least on my screen, so
Okay.
why don't you follow?
How much time do you have for my resume? How much time are you allocating then? So, undergraduate, Fordham, NYU grad school. Then I decided I wanted to save the world and worked in state legislatures under national grants, nonpartisan staff, worked in several legislatures on health policy and the legislative process. Somewhere along the way, I must have taken a left turn and I went into the pharmaceutical industry. And I spent most of my career early on with Ledley Laboratories, and we had one of the first vaccines, believe it or not, DTP at that time, and spent some time at Novartis in international capacity, and finally at J&J, working in both biotech and then Tylenol on the consumer side. Since then, been chairman at Pennsbury Manor, Peter, for about 10 years now, far too long, looking for a successor. And I unfortunately agreed about a year and a half ago to serve on this committee, and I'm still here.
Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome.
Once again, appreciate your volunteering. Fred, you're next on my screen.
Fred Childs, I'm a 27-year resident, Lower Makefield, retired from career in project management, supervision, design, with some major national transportation companies, and also engineering and project management firms in the Philadelphia and New York, New Jersey area.
Thank you, Fred, for your volunteering. Jennifer, how about yourself?
Well, first I have to say this is really fun because we've never had all this background information revealed before.
No secrets.
Yeah. Well, I am a 30-year resident of Lower Makefield. I am an historic preservation architect. I was an owner's rep for about 8 years with Avis and Young, and that's how we ended up managing the past phase of this project, which was the master plan itself. I'm former chair of the HARB. I've been serving on the HARB for a very long time. I'm also chair of the appeals board in Lower Make. And I don't think any of you know this, but I was a council person in Yardley Borough when I lived in the borough.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Okay. Wasn't aware of that. It's a learning. That's a learning. Thank you for volunteering. Joe?
Joe Camarada. I've actually been probably the least amount of time then in Lower Makefield, moving in 2018, so going on 6 years there. My background has nothing to do with this. I'm a computer scientist, and I worked in the medical technology industry most of my career, or all of my career, I should say. But somehow along the way, discovered a real passion for history, and specifically historic preservation. So when moving to Lower Makefield, I did two things. I first of all, I enrolled in the certificate for historic preservation at Bucks County Community College, where I've been taking a lot of classes. And the second thing I did is I reached out to Helen Hines, who immediately recruited me to the Historical Commission, of which I now chair. So, and have been, engaged with the ad hoc committee through its various phases, and as a participant last time.
Very good. Thank you, Joe, for volunteering. And Barry, how about yourself, please?
Sure. So I've been a 1-month employee of Lower Makefield Township. Today's my 1-month anniversary. I have a 30-plus year career all in local government, 3 townships and Montgomery County for a number of years, either in the finance role or finance officer or township manager. My last employer, Warrington Township, we had a very active open space committee. We preserved about 1,000 acres of land, and with some conservation easements and some other things. So I'm familiar with that. Not as much with the historic preservation, but I read the master plan, and it looks like it's intriguing. It looks like a pretty exciting thing if everything comes to fruition, or even part of it comes to fruition. So happy to be here. Happy to assist the committee and Dave and whatever you need. So
Thank you.
I'll be watching the purse strings.
Good. Thank you, Barry. As taxpayers, we certainly need that. David?
Sure. And first of all, I apologize that I don't have a camera on at this point. But Dave Kratzer, Township Manager of Lower Makefield Township, have been working in local government for almost 20 years at this point in various parts of the Commonwealth, and have been serving as the Township Manager of Lower Makefield since January of 2023. So, as Barry said, we're here to support the committee in any way that we can as we try to chart a new course for this important property within the community. So again, look forward to being an active participant and being supportive and helpful in any way that I can and we can as a township staff. So thank you.
Okay, all right. And I see Dan Grenier on the screen now too. I hadn't seen you there before, Dan. Dan, a little thumbnail sketch, a little intro.
Sure. So I'm Dan Grenier. I'm your supervisor liaison. This is my 7th year on the board, having served in every role, currently the vice chair. Prior to that, I was on the EAC with Peter here, so we go way back. It's the prior to that, in terms of volunteer work and local government work, I've been on multiple planning commissions, multiple state technical advisory boards for various items, going back all the way to my graduate school days at the University of Pennsylvania. I was one of the regional planners at Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. Even prior to that, I was then Mayor Ed Rendell's intern for as an undergrad doing brownfields redevelopment in the city of Philadelphia for the Commerce Department.
Oh.
And if you want to go even further back than that, I was on my first planning commission when I was in high school in the mid 90s. Professional world, I've spent the last 24 years working for probably all of the largest architecture, engineering, environmental firms. These are international firms. So I've been up and down the East Coast, across the country, and many other countries, working on environmental and engineering issues and infrastructure development and redevelopment. So I'm excited to be here. I grew up in a historic home in Maine, and love that. And I still visit the original family home in Quebec, Canada, with the date stone of 1640, and it's still family members that are living there. So I love to see this stuff maintained and prosper over the long term. So I'm looking forward to this.
Well, that's great. Great. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for being here and playing that role of liaison back to the Board of Supervisors. That's obviously critical, and I'm sure that'll become a well-worn path over the work of this committee. Well, I have to say, and I think it's obvious that there's a lot of talent and experience and expertise on this committee, which is terrific to see. And I think the Board of Supervisors has done a good job in forming this committee. And if we look at agenda items that we should cover, I think the first one would be that to just review and be sure there's a common understanding on the forming resolution. So I'm going to share that document in just a minute here. That right here. Oh, I see why. As I'm bringing this up, I'm going to just provide the background. Patterson Farm has been owned by the township for 25 years. It was purchased primarily to preserve open space and preserve farmland, and the majority of the 234 acres of Patterson Farm are under easement, agricultural easement, and preserved farmland. The township really didn't have a plan for the farmsteads that are populated with a total of 15 buildings, and most of which are historic buildings, and the status of of those farmsteads and those buildings reflect the fact that there wasn't a plan, and there wasn't really envisioned uses for those buildings, and that's why the Patterson Farm master plan, the need for a master plan was seen, and that's why the township invested time, money, and energy into creating that master plan. When that master plan was delivered to the Board of Supervisors and approved by the Board of Supervisors, along with the key elements for phase one. Amongst those recommendations that the plan included was to form an implementation committee to help the township, support the township in the implementation of the master plan. And if one is familiar with the master plan, you'll see that one of the conclusions from that work was that inherently, structurally, municipal governments are not well organized or staffed or structured to really run a significant historical site or these kinds of sites. So the recommendation includes the creation or identification of an effective, focused nonprofit organization that could take over the running of this property, the management of this property, via fundraisers and volunteers, et cetera, et cetera. Because the township, if we to quote a very well-informed expert on the subject, if to fulfill the vision of the master plan, which is to create a historical site with commercial tenants and art and agriculture and history and education. If the vision was to expect Lower Makefield Township in and of itself to fulfill that full vision in the long term, the probability of success is somewhere next to zero. And we all know the probability of success is key in any investment decision, any decision whatsoever. There's always that subjective assessment of what's the probability of success. So, but that being said, in order to identify a nonprofit organization, someone who can really take on this responsibility, there's really some stage one, phase one, kind of core fundamental elements that need to be addressed at the property that will allow the property and the township to attract that focused, effective nonprofit to manage it. I think in the same way, to quote a well-informed person on the subject, the probability of attracting a nonprofit in to try to take responsibility of this property as it exists exactly today is also probably a probability of next to zero. So I think the stage one and the implementation, the idea behind the implementation committee is to help ready the property, help the township make those progress, that important progress that will allow the prospect and the excitement that this property can present to the community to help see the light of day and to get it closer to it, to get it ready for that. And so the Board of Supervisors passed Resolution 2406, which I'm showing to you now, and I just highlighted some of the key elements without getting too bogged down in the legalese and the whys and the whereases. What I've highlighted here is creating a Patterson Farm Master Plan Implementation Committee is in the best interest of the township to ensure that the master plan is properly implemented, and that a conceptual management structure for overseeing the master plan and the Patterson Farm redevelopment is completed. So the community and the township both supported this master plan, and now it's going to need some lifting and some support to begin that implementation. Phase one, I'll remind everyone, in the master plan is defined as 1 to 3 years. What goes on in phase two and the details of phase two will, of course, be a function of some successes and some failures that may exist during phase one. So it's critical that we get off on this kind of healthy start. So the supervisors then laid out this charge. Patterson Farm Master Plan Implementation Committee is established with no fewer than 5 and no more than 7 members, and we're a fully formed committee now with 6. Thank you all for your volunteering. Committee's mandate is to take steps to recommend all necessary measures to implement phase 1 of the Patterson Farm Master Plan, and in doing so, consider the various relevant environmental studies completed by our engineering firm. And the committee will also consider options for nonprofit entities to manage Patterson Farm. So right up front, it's to implement phase 1, include charter is quite clear, and the master plan is quite clear in terms of what is included in stage 1, and so I think it's appropriate that we walk through that. So I'm going to pause for just a minute and give some others a chance to talk, thoughts, reactions, comments on this pretty straightforward charter that this committee has been assigned to.
So, Dennis, I can speak from the board's perspective in terms of the conversations we've been having around the implementation committee, early phase stuff, etc. Obviously, the key to implementing any master plan are the first basic steps to get that proverbial snowball rolling downhill, right? In the right direction. So what we've had some work done separately, as I'm sure we'll get into in detail, some of which you already know of, relative to the environmental issues at the property. Obviously, Remington Vernick, our township engineer, has done a bunch of work that we'll have to consider, and is something that the board has been focused on as probably the first item to address and get moving on, to address remediation and mitigation issues. We've also had our prior township solicitor, which was given a mandate to review nonprofit options. I believe this committee has received a copy of that memo. I'll be honest with you, in reviewing it, it's a pretty light memo, so I think there's probably a fair amount of work to be done to identify either potential nonprofits or new groups, or maybe some combination thereof, that could look to manage maybe certain parts of the overall property that's several hundred acres, obviously to not interfere with farming operations, of course, but there may be opportunities for different nonprofits to do different things, and etc. So from the Board of Supervisors perspective, I think the first 2 priorities that this committee can help with are, one, giving some ideas and some recommendations on the remediation side of things, to get things cleaned up and safe so that we can move forward with something in a safe way. And then also really digging into the nonprofit side of thing, because I do think that especially members of this, a lot of folks on this board have a really good history and experience, obviously, with nonprofits in this area, and I think we are definitely looking to take advantage of that as much as possible, so that we can get those foundational items taken care of, so that we can then build on that and move forward. Because, and last thing I'll say is, if I think most of y'all have been following our budget discussions, we know that we do have some budget concerns, and we're trying to be as efficient as possible. So we've allotted money in the budget for certain things this year up front that we hope to do to take care of the first issues. But I do think this is a multi-year, multi-phase effort that in order to get this done, we'll also, further on down the road, I think that we'll probably be looking for some help in identifying lots of grants and other income sources, because we're not flush right now. And I'm sure I can see Barry nodding, because I know he's been getting into that. So those are the three main things that the board's been talking about, really: the environmental issues, the nonprofit, and looking at finance issues. And then everything else stems from, we're able to proceed from there. So I'll stop there. If anyone has any questions about what the board's been talking about, I'm happy to answer, but that's about where we've gotten to date.
Thank you. Any comments?
Dan, Joe, on the nonprofit, how far is the board expecting the committee to go in terms of picking or choosing or selecting a few? Talk about establishing its own. Can you, I guess one of the things that I'm still trying to grapple with is what our boundaries here, or what you think, or how far you'd like us to go on some of these.
Well, I think that it's a little bit TBD based on how things proceed. So, and what I mean by that is we have to start somewhere, right? And I think that memo we got from the former solicitor is okay, but really, I think it really needs to be, I don't think we have very many options as shown by that, but I do know, working in this space myself, I'm aware of a lot of nonprofits that work in this space, big and small, national, local, etc. So I think we need to I would love to see this group really dig into that and be thoughtful about what the difference is between, maybe come up with a couple of different options between leveraging an existing nonprofit that's a large nonprofit that has history doing this, and maybe have some discussions with those groups to get some ideas, thinking out loud. There are some I'll also say there are some very small nonprofits that are passionate about historic preservation and are passionate about historic preservation at Patterson Farm, where the board has expressed an interest in involving that group in some way, shape, or form, because of the knowledge and the passion and some of the skill sets, and potentially see, not to get too far ahead of my skis here, but if there's giving them an opportunity to do something early stages to prove whether, see if they, to test the water, see if they can do it or not, and then at the same time, so those are different ways of using existing nonprofits, but which is nice because you don't have to set up a new organization, you don't have to deal with bylaws and all that stuff and taxes and whatnot. But there may be, maybe when you get into all that, you say, look, this is a square peg round hole situation. We need to round off that peg and come up with a new one that's more focused on this property. So the recommendation might be, let's develop a new nonprofit, kind of like maybe a little bit like Farmland Preservation Inc. or something like that, like we already have in town, and we go forward that way. So I think all options are on the table, Joe. That's the very long way of saying all options are on their table. And I think once we start looking at those options, what the board would look for this committee to do will evolve. And I'll take that back to the board, and they may say, hey, stop here, or let's progress, or let's find some key stopping points to interview different groups or to talk to different groups in front of the board to get a feel for what they might be able to do. and then proceed from there. So I think there's a lot of space to grow in that particular area. I don't know. If anybody has any other ideas on that, obviously, we're open to it. But I think we're trying to keep an open mind and look at all options.
Mhm.
Just wondering, on that point, I was talking to Doug Miller, who's our site administrator over at Pennsbury Manor today about some of this. And we were kind of kicking around some ideas how we could get some resources to help us think some of this through. And one thing Doug mentioned, and Joe, you are probably more familiar with this than I am, but apparently at the Bucks County Community College, they do have a historic preservation division. They have a certificate in historic preservation. I'm just kind of wondering out loud here as part of this is, could we tap into some of those resources there to help us begin to think some of this through and look at some best practices?
We can always ask, right? I mean, my experience is they're not, in terms of nonprofit management, like we're talking about here, it's not necessarily. They would be the kind of resources. I mean, there's probably a number of topics actually on the phase one where they could help us. And for example, I recruited someone from that program to help the historical commission with the National Register submission. I mean, that's really what there's. But I mean, Ron, it doesn't hurt to ask and see if there's a contact they can maybe give us.
Okay, I'll follow up on that then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ron, there are statewide organizations specific to historic preservation nonprofits that we could leverage to see who's in the area, what they're doing, what they're where this might fit into one of those groups' interests, where we might have some commonality and different groups that we may be interested in talking to.
Yeah,
So
I'm going to reach out to Pano. I'm familiar with them. We're a member. Pano is a good resource to help us think some of this through and maybe even identify some not-for-profits and some people who can counsel us on these matters.
Ron,
Association of Not-for-Profit Agencies. I'm sorry. That's what the title is.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. Well, before we go too far down this path, let's look at what is included in phase one of the master plan that's been presented and approved. And I've really tried to summarize it here on 8 fronts. And Dan, this includes the things that Dan mentioned, plus some, but certainly at the top of the list, identify or establish a dedicated, focused nonprofit organization to manage Patterson Farm on behalf of LMT. Basically, a property manager who can oversee the property, the tenants, do fundraising, organize some of the things that the Lower Makefield Township simply can't do. Also high on that list is water abatement. Without that, things can go deteriorate at an accelerating pace. So water abatement to keep buildings dry. An element of that is painting and the necessary light carpentry that may be required to support the painting to protect and enhance the property, to show progress, visible progress. Obviously, environmental cleanups, they're all, kind of a part of this process. Some of these things may impact each other, so that needs to be sorted. Identify potential grant monies. We've particularly talked about the Redevelopment Capital Assistance Program that I know, Lower Makefield Township staff are familiar with. Prepare a submission for listing in the National Registry of Historic Places. I know Joe and the Historical Commission has taken that assignment on and is pushing that forward. Create new improved access for the farming operations and the public, because those two today are somewhat in conflict. They're certainly anything but ideal. It's kind of haphazard based on history. So creating some of the new access is very important, fundamentally important to the site. And the design, if not execution, design of a future nature trail, again, showing that kind of prospect and progress to the community. And then 8 was identify and prepare those first buildings, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, we don't know, but the initial buildings that would represent the absolute earliest opportunity for leasing for compatible uses. And to reference the thought I had before, I think with this list of kind of fundamental building blocks for the site, much of this needs to be certainly well on its way, if not fully executed, in order to realistically attract a nonprofit to begin to fundraise and to begin to organize and begin to devote resources to it. I don't think we'd have very good luck doing nonprofit fundraising for environmental cleanup of lead paint around buildings, as an example. That's not going to motivate volunteers or involve them. So this is the list, if you will, of this stage 1. Obviously, not all of equal priority, but nevertheless, all playing a role. And so we're fortunate. David and Barry and Jim Majewski met. We had a meeting with them earlier in the week to kind of catch us up on where things stand with each project. And I really appreciate David, you and Barry being available tonight. And I know you've stated your support. I mean, this committee can help prioritize, can help make decisions, can help evaluate things. But we're not gonna, we can't fund an environmental cleanup. We just have to help work with you and your staff to execute on these things. So that's the list. Just any comments, any questions, any issues, Dave, you want to talk about, or any committee member?
Just one item, just sort of on the environmental remediation sort of cleanup front, and again, it remains to be seen what type of assistance is potentially available. But we did meet, and again, I'm just throwing this out just so that there's an awareness. We did meet with the County Redevelopment Authority about potential resource that they may have available. Again, it's not atypical for them to be dealing with environmental related issues when they're dealing with different types of blighted property. So there is a resource, state resource that filters down through redevelopment authorities that we may be able to leverage. So again, we met with the executive director of the authority and the deputy executive director of the authority. They have a copy of the soil investigation report that was referenced, that was completed by RVE. And they also have the master plan as well. And so there was no sort of commitment that came out of that meeting, but there may be, when we're talking about leveraging sort of external entities, that may be another entity that could be of help to us as we proceed forward. And again, does have some capacity and expertise in addressing sort of environmental cleanup issues. Might be slightly different than the issues that we're facing on this site, but nevertheless are aware of sort of resources that exist within that space. So it was a sort of productive first meeting, and they're again, as I said, reviewing both the report that was completed by RVE related to the soil investigation, and then also looking at the plan in general, because there may be, when we get into the structures, again, while not a historic preservation organization, there may be some assistance that they can provide in terms of partners that they've worked with in other areas of the county. So I just share that for informational purposes at this point. But when we're looking at sort of other levels of government, we've traditionally been, talking about funding, which obviously is important. But there may be some other technical expertise that we can leverage by engaging with an entity like a redevelopment authority.
So, Dan, can I ask on that point, just in terms of roles and relationships here between the township, the supervisors, and this committee, it sounds to me from what you just said that you guys are going to run with that part of it. When your opening comments, you said there were three important matters. One was remediation, two was to move forward on the nonprofit. So am I to interpret your comments that you're moving forward on the remediation side, and you're looking to us to do more research on the not-for-profits that might be available to us, or to create one? Is that
partially. So remediation is sort of an umbrella term for the site, I think. There's I think, not to put words in David's mouth, but the main thing that the township can move forward with is the remediation of the lead contaminated soils that are around the site. That's just hiring the right contractors and getting it done, right? That's removing dirt and putting it someplace else. Basic. You don't have to tell us to do that. That's something I've been doing for 20 some odd years myself. So it's pretty basic. It's not cheap, but it's pretty basic. Now, there's also the remediation plans for what Dennis was speaking to previously about making sure that the buildings are effectively watertight, or resistant to the elements, and aren't taking in water or anything else for that matter, and aren't ready to fall down. There's the remediation with respect to the lead paint that's there. There's remediation with respect to the structural issues are there. So, and probably other things that have been identified. So that side of the remediation term, that part of the umbrella, I think this group can, we have to do all of it at some point, but they all come with dollar signs, and there are obviously costs associated with those, and prioritization associated with all that. So I think this committee can help us say, hey, this is what we think you should do first, based off everything you guys deal with the soil stuff and maybe some related items, but hey, we have this whole list of other items that need to be remediated before we can even, really, to Dennis's point again, I'm going to be saying that a lot, Dennis, I think, about, going out and talking to nonprofits and sort of marketing this, for lack of a better term. That stuff's going to have to be addressed. And I think this group can say, hey, we think these are probably the best things you could do. Stop it here, bring it to this point, whatever it may be. And that's where you need to get us to, so that we can have those effective conversations with other groups and move things forward. Does that help?
Yes, that helps. It helps me. Yeah.
Okay. A couple of questions here. I noticed the focus has been on the lead paint and the soil, but there's a couple things otherwise. Looking at the report, looked like there was a high priority item regarding asbestos that needed to be dealt with. Is that part of what you're looking at with the redevelopment authority right now? Is that asbestos remediation?
Yeah, that would be part of that. Again,
Okay.
I know focused on the lead-based paint sort of contamination of soils, but they again they have all of the documents and are looking at how they can be of assistance to us in some of those remediation efforts, including the what you're raising. So yes.
Yeah, because the asbestos would prohibit somebody from going in. And now another item that came up during, obviously, is even the sequencing issue relative to the soils, because we need to stabilize the exterior envelope. Otherwise, you're just shedding more lead paint off the building and recreating the problem. So really, there are sequencing issues even with regard to the soils.
Right. Yep.
And then on a separate note, just listening to other people talking about this on a more immediate situation, what are the township resources that could be utilized to start working on improving access? I mean, that's a question to come back. We do road maintenance and the rest. So how much of that could be asked back on the township?
Well, Peter, I'll jump in for a second. One of the things we have to look at relative to access is one, improving existing access on existing access drives, right? And seeing what we can and should do there. I know there's been some discussion about additional access. So we also have to look to see if that is feasible because of the existing easements and use restrictions on site and line of sight and all kinds of other things that go into that. So I think even access, we have to split that up a little bit too, to look at what we can do in the short term, midterm, long term, relative to access as it plays into the rest of the plan. So I think township does have some resources, but we also even if we were to deploy those resources, it costs money for materials, as I know you know. And we would also have to look at whether or not there's a knock-on effect. For example, additional stormwater management might be required if we do something different with access, which takes up more space, takes more money, and we have to be thoughtful about that. So we can't look at any of that in a vacuum, but I think we'll break that up into its parts too. But that's definitely something this committee can look at.
Now, when we look at a list like this, which is, I guess I'd call it diverse. If the committee is going to try to wrestle with this octopus of a list, it seems to me that it might be wise if we could divide that up, kind of divide and conquer some of these things. I mean, we have varying levels of expertise and interest on the committee. I mean, the obvious example is preparing a submission for National Registry listing. I mean, Joe's leading that. Joe, the Historical Commission's taking that lead, and I don't see the rest of us getting that involved in that. So, and separate from any kind of discussion of election of officers, just having a project lead within the committee on some of these different initiatives would seem to make sense, so that the project lead can give a report each month or update us as the rest of the committee as things advance, and the committee can weigh in and help. But I think we need to divide and conquer this list just a bit to help make effective progress and to work effectively and efficiently with the township. There'll be different interfaces necessary on different projects. So I'd like to have a discussion of that. What's the committee's thoughts, reactions to taking that approach?
Sounds good. It would avoid all of us working on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or would support that as well.
Or the other possibility, which is all of us are working on nothing.
Nothing.
Those are the two outcomes if we don't divide it up. So,
makes sense to me as well.
I mean,
and I was thinking, obviously, Dennis, you and Ron, with your expertise in existing nonprofits, one or both of you would certainly be key to sorting out some of that information. Jennifer and Peter have shown their environmental backgrounds, so I think that one and both could be working together in conjunction with the township along those lines. Peter, myself, Jennifer all have project management, construction management backgrounds, so certainly some of those, the water abatement, painting, new access, those kinds of things. I think we could figure out amongst us who that would best take some of that on. Dennis, obviously, in dealing with the farmers, you already have that connection with them. So,
Right. Okay. All right.
but I had thought that maybe to take it really would help to have a visual understanding of this from a project standpoint, and lay out these 8 key items, try to come up with a prioritization, sequencing, who's, like you say, who's going to take the lead on each of the areas, and where the funding is coming from, that kind of thing. So I could take a stab at that over the next couple of days, and let as a draft, but certainly not as a professional project manager, but Jennifer and Peter could probably weigh in as well on that.
Well, if I understood the conversation earlier, the water abatement, the painting, which is kind of part of the water abatement, it's part of protecting wood structures, obviously, and the environmental cleanup. There are sequencing issues around those, and to me, if it makes sense to Peter and Jennifer and the others more expert in this, to me those 3 are almost one category in and of its one undertaking in and of itself, to try to, there may be contractors that and I don't know what I'm talking about, but as an example, quality contractors who can paint these historic buildings, that know how to encapsulate that and protect the lead, and are familiar with some of that sequencing. I think we can, we can work with, with outside groups like that, and our own internal staff, obviously, to sort that out. Jennifer, Peter, are you thinking that those 3 are kind of a simultaneous equation to be solved, or do I have that if I have that confused?
I think you're spot on.
Great.
Okay. So we'll kind of, we should have a lead kind of for that. That's one category, right? And I don't want to put everybody on the spot tonight to immediately in the first hour and 10 minutes of our existence to nail people down on this, but I do think we want to, if anybody wants to volunteer for any of these particular assignments, great. If not, we can email and we can talk, and we can sort that out, and give everyone a chance to sleep on it, and discuss a little more what is involved in stepping up as a lead on any item.
Dennis, if I can add something real quick. I think you might have had this for the ad hoc committee way back when, but this committee, more than most, will be dealing with a lot of data and a lot of reports, a lot of information of all different types, right? So I think it would be helpful, Dave Kratzer, if we set them up with a SharePoint site or something like that, where we can house all that stuff. And then you can also go in, and to your point, Dennis, you can set up documents that you all can edit without having to email them around and pull your hair out trying to figure out what's the latest version, kind of thing. And then you can create sort of I'll call it a sign-up wizard, because I'm a dad that has to use that stuff all the time these days. But you can create some sort of committee list, initial structure saying, hey, here are the subcommittees or group leads that we want to have. Feel free to sign up which one you want to be a part of, kind of deal. And then maybe that's your action item coming into the next meeting, is to kind of seal the deal on that before moving forward with the other stuff. But if we can get you all, I think it would help everyone a lot if we could get you all access to a SharePoint site where you can put everything, so you're not chasing your emails all the time. That personally, I find that super helpful.
David, does that seem to fit in the bailiwick?
Yeah. We can. I'm not while proficient in use. I'm not an expert in terms of setting it up. So that being said, but yeah, that should be doable, and that I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay. And just for the record, speaking only for myself as a capital S senior citizen, I may not be good at that. And there may be a lot of learning, and I might view Dan's comments as age discriminatory, but
Hey, Dan, how about we
teasing.
institute
I'm
something
teasing.
like Kahua or eBuilder?
That's fun.
Can we just eat and have a cup of coffee and talk about it?
I'll do all of the above. Now, Dennis, if you have any issues with that at all, I will personally come by and help you out, because it's so easy. Even I do it.
I'll just call you and leave a voicemail. Don't worry.
Yeah, Dennis, we're all volunteering to come down to Long Beach Island in the summer. That's
okay. Yeah. We can get it done there. Okay.
There we go.
Before we leave this discussion, is there anybody that wants to raise their hand on any particular topic, or you want to sleep on this? I'm happy either way. No pressure. But if anybody wants to, like I say, volunteer for a topic, I don't want to hold you back either. All right, hearing none, we'll continue to discuss and sleep on that. Thank you. If there's no other discussion right now on the major elements of stage one, can we turn to the topic of nomination and election of officers? Since this committee is just getting underway, that would seem quite appropriate at this point. Now, and David and Dan want your guidance here, but our thinking has been that in this committee we obviously need a chair to organize the meetings, conduct the meetings, a vice chair to back up that chair, and a secretary that would be responsible for finalizing minutes and getting them approved, and if there's any kind of document backup. That's been quite traditional. Is that sufficient? I'm presuming.
I would think that would be okay. Yep.
Yeah, and especially you're going to be you always need a backup, right, in case to run a meeting. People have busy lives and vacations, all that, so that's all good.
Right.
That and a secretary is usually helpful as well. You don't need a treasurer, but secretary is often helpful.
We have Barry. He's already nominated for himself for that. I'm looking for volunteers to act as committee chair. Anyone interested in taking that on? I know many of you are active in other committees too, so I know it's demanding. If no volunteers, nominations,
Would Jennifer consider that?
I was going to nominate Dennis.
you have to speak faster, Jennifer.
I'm not sure I have the bandwidth to be a chair. It takes a lot of work, and from what Dennis has done, I would love it if Dennis would consider serving again.
I'd second that, but I know he's Might be reluctant.
Hired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, perhaps though, perhaps if we can effectively relieve some of the pressure off of the chairman by setting up these leads on various projects, it
Mhm.
might take some of the pressure off of being chairman to drive all of it. And that may make it more acceptable for everybody. Just a thought.
Right. Well, as some of you know, as I was as the ad hoc committee was coming to a head, I was pleading to step down as chair due to time crunches and other things. If we don't have someone willing to do it, I am willing to serve as chair. I think with two provisos, I would have to say one is what Ron just said. If we can take the kind of project lead approach, I think that would represent a spreading out of the workload and just be more efficient. And two, if the secretary or vice chair, I don't know, it would be willing to take on the responsibilities of really kind of organizing the meetings, the draft of the agenda and the pursuit of different things. I'm happy to chair and to do all the work that's necessary to try to implement this master plan that I do believe is critically important and will be of great value to our community when implemented. But if the chair gets that kind of support, I'm willing to sign up for that.
Yeah, Dennis, I would just add from a township staff perspective, we can also provide some additional support, and to the extent that there's sort of the project lead concept that you're talking about, even in terms of assisting with agenda setting, preparation, those kinds of things, we can do that if we have sort of points of contact that we're interfacing with primarily on specific areas of the project. Again, not to if there's committee members that are interested in doing that, we're not trying to step in and take over this process any stretch of the imagination, but happy to provide that support as we sort of move into some of the implementation efforts.
Okay, thank you. That's good to hear. Is there a nomination then for chair, the second, and to vote on?
Jennifer, were you going to move it?
I'll make a motion to nominate Dennis Stedman as chair of the committee, with the proviso that we have the active working committees to supplement the effort, and we also have the support of the township admin staff.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Dennis.
I was going to say sorry, Dennis.
After we go, when we get out the public, I'll give you my mailing address so you can send me the sympathy cards.
Everybody owes you at least a coffee, Dennis. Not something stronger. Longer we go.
Okay. Thank you.
If not, they can help with the SharePoint site as well, right? That'll be another contribution that can be made to offset the burden.
That might be needed. Is there any nominations or volunteers for vice chair?
I'll volunteer for vice chair, and I will assist as part of that role. I'll take on assisting in organization of the SharePoint site and developing an SOP to help ensure that we don't lose documents and everybody finds it easier to find what they need.
Wow.
Now he's just showing off.
No, I've been on enough projects,
I
Dan,
know.
to know that this
I
is
know.
worth doing it at the start.
This is
I
the
will-
time to
yes.
do it if we're going to do
Project execution plan, Peter, right?
Yes.
it.
I'm right there with you.
Thank you, Peter, for that volunteer. Is there a second to nominate Peter as vice chair?
I'll second the nomination.
Thank you. All those in favor of Peter Solar as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Right. Very
Aye.
good. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Secretary, are there anyone volunteering for secretary before you get voluntold? Fortunately, the township. I'm presuming this is going to be the same, David, as the ad hoc was, where minutes are drafted by Janelle. She does a great job. Oh, Barry.
Hand up.
So, yeah, hang on a second. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So Dave and I have asked Dave about how we do all the minutes at all the committees in the township, and he told me about who we use, and but we're kicking that around. A lot of townships use, just as you were about to do, a secretary on the committee to do the minutes. This is Dave's call, not my call, but that's the way I was hoping the committees would.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this case, I think there was a specific request, I think, for support in that fashion, to have somebody assist with minutes. So I'm pretty sure that request was made, and I think Katie was already coordinating, actually, Barry, with Janelle on this one.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, from a board perspective, since that does involve the expenditure of funds, does the board have to vote? The board of supervisors have to vote on that? Just to be.
Yeah, I mean, we can have that conversation. Yeah.
I think everyone's picking up what we're talking about, but just so it's clear, whenever we have someone else take the minutes, it's a professional that we have to pay for their time to write the minutes, and that can add up over time, right? So Barry, being in his role, I know he's asking the question, is just trying to see if there's the most cost-effective way to do it. So that's what we're looking at. Other committees, they've had secretaries do it. Other ones have tried their spouses show up and write the minutes. And others, we have court reporters for the zoning hearing board, but that's by law. So as Peter knows so well. So we're just trying to figure out the most cost-effective way to do it that also provides the benefit to the committee of actual minutes that we can work off of. So that's the balancing act that they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that and I can't recall sort of the breadth of the ad hoc committee minutes, but the minutes are generally to be reflective of actions taken by the body, not a stenographic record or transcription of conversation. So, I mean, we could probably even do it, internally using existing staff that's not sort of part-time staff to reflect, the actions taken by the committee. I mean, your meetings are televised. I believe there's a recording component on that, but I don't. So I don't know that. Let us talk about this minute issue, and we can get back to you on that. How about that?
And I certainly agree with the thought, which is what I was going to say. I mean, in this kind of committee, we're not spending money. We're making recommendations to a body who can spend money. We don't need transcripts, obviously. We need meeting minutes that summarize the decisions and future actions. maybe some of the discussion, and that was the approach we took with ad hoc, which was to take Janelle's draft, just review that to make it more conversational, because when you look at a transcript of spoken words, sometimes you wish in writing it would have been said differently, so you're not changing the content but you're editing. And there is a transcript of every meeting via the recording of this video, so we need to capture the minutes. I'll let the township discuss that and decide the best way to do it. I know how it was done with ad hoc. It's obviously your call as to how to do that rolling forward. In the same context, and I'm going to go down a short tangent. In the same context of this support from the township, the topic came up of hybrid meetings. During the ad hoc, it really started when we were still in the tail end of the pandemic form, and all meetings were just like this, Zoom, 100% Zoom. It was my understanding from the township after the pandemic wound down that we should either be 100% in person or 100% Zoom, and not hybrid. That makes it an easy call, because some people are traveling. Somebody, getting to the township building at 7 o'clock at night from wherever you are is not easy. So we've been operating on 100% Zoom. But is a hybrid meeting possible? Because this is a group that we haven't all worked together in the past. Could some people go to the township and some people be on Zoom? I mean, many committees, I know, Peter, you said your zoning committee or zoning board, works that way. Is there any reason why this committee couldn't work that way, or is that an option?
Dave Kratzer, do we have oh geez, is there anybody at the township building that can get this up on the screen to implement a hybrid approach, or is it set up so this one has to be Zoom based just because it's been like that for so long, so they're not scheduled?
Let me check on that, just in terms of the scheduling issue. I mean, obviously there's nothing that would, from a technical perspective, that would restrict the ability to transition to a hybrid. So let me just again make sure that we're not getting into spatial sort of conflicts and schedule related conflicts, and we can get back on that issue as well.
Okay, thank you.
To your point, Dennis, when looking at some of the stuff we're going to be looking at, I think it'll be nice to be there in person and kind of spread out on the table kind of thing, and really take a look at stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Zoom is great, but in person is always more effective communication. That we're certain of that. So after that, somewhat of a tangent, any nominations for secretary? Hearing none, we might have
can't draw, and you can't draw short straws on Zoom either for this.
I know Fred takes great notes, but I don't want to say it.
Okay, all right. Well, let's hold that in abeyance, and we'll have some offline discussions and figure that out, and let's also get an answer from David on the minutes support question that we had too before we try to fill that position. Right.
Sounds good.
All right. The agenda says at this point, review of next steps and assignments. I think the next steps include this committee looking at, thinking about, talking to each other about the project leads, and I think we will need that kind of division of labor, and then some of the follow-up items that Dave has on township support. And Dave, I really appreciate your availability early in the week. Joe, you had a question?
There's a question on the projects. I remember we came in with like 7 or 8 topics, and you were mentioning bringing some of them together. Did we make a final decision in terms of how we were grouping those? Like, what would be the projects for which we're looking for leads?
Yeah. Let me see. Let me share that screen again.
Yeah, and I think Fred had, I mean, not to again volunteer Fred, but Fred, you had indicated that you would be willing to put together some sort of schematic, right, for circulation.
Yeah, I don't want to step on anybody else's efforts in that regard, but at least try to get something down on paper.
Yeah. Okay. And there seemed to be there was concurrence that these items 2, 3, and 4 are kind of one bucket, fall under one umbrella. The nonprofit identification of a nonprofit could potentially be paired with the where was it, the grant monies. Those 2 things could dovetail under a single hat. The rest, I think, are kind of, they're each their own thing. But we could combine that in different ways. The access, the identification, prioritization of buildings. I mean, even when we talk about the painting, for example, and water abatement, I mean, there's 15 buildings. They're not all equal, right? They all have different status in terms of age and condition. They all there is a variation in the soil contamination around them. Some more substantial than others. I'm not sure what all that means, but my point is that we need to do some prioritization even within these elements, right? It's not we're gonna paint everything, and we're as an example. So and it's going to be real hard to prioritize. We can't prioritize until we start laying some numbers beside these things, right? Some with dollar signs in front of them, because there is relative priorities, and while the ad hoc committee had, early estimates of what some of these things were estimated to cost, and they're probably in the ballpark. At this stage of implementation, we need to get down to RFPs and real bids, and start getting some numbers laid down beside these things, because we might say, well, yeah, we can do these 8, but those 7 are gonna wait for next year or another phase. I don't know. So it's why we need the project leads, and then they can bring that kind of information back to the full committee, and really have an intelligent, informed discussion on those kinds of decisions. All right. So is that are we okay, Fred, and the rest, with kind of some next steps?
Fred, are you going to draft that and send it around to everybody? Is that what we did? Did we agree to that?
Yes, I think so. Peter, if there's some typical process that maybe you are familiar with, you use that when you want to set that up for the SharePoint site, then we can talk about that.
Yeah, but I think certainly, but I think that's separate from just determining what people are taking the leads on here.
Yeah.
We need Dave to set up the site before we can use it anyways.
Right, right, okay.
Fred, something as simple as like a table in Word or Excel that people can put their names in a box next to a heading.
Right.
And lead and support whatever, probably get it started.
Yeah.
And I think you already set it up in your head already based on what you said earlier. I think you got it down.
Yeah. Agree.
And how do you spell SharePoint?
All right. Is there any other business before we ask for public comments?
I just wanted to note that we, as part of getting the property listed on the National Register, we've been talking to the Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO as we call it. And they are coming out for a site visit to Patterson Farm on April 30th. They'll be there at 11 a.m. So if anyone's interested in joining that, please let me know and I'll put you on the invite list.
Joe, who are you dealing with at PHMC?
Megan McNish is our Easter Regional Coordinator, so she's coordinating it. There's a new person, Jennifer Thornton, I believe her last name is, who's taken over responsibility now for the National Register submission. So we already had a call with them. We did determination of eligibility. We got some feedback. We had a call around it, and they wanted to come out and look at the site. So we arranged for that.
Good stuff. Nice job.
Good. Excellent, Joe. John, is there our meeting coordinator? Is there any public comment?
No public comment online.
A reminder to all that we're on a rhythm of 7:30 at night on the second Thursday of the month. So while it's not booked yet through Katie, that would be May 9th as the next meeting. And of course, we can always huddle in working sessions and other things as issues arise. But right now, the next meeting would be May 9th. Any other comment, question, things we should talk about on this initial meeting? I really appreciate everyone's time tonight.
This has been great. If anything just a reminder as the liaison, if anything comes up along the way, you want, not necessarily guidance because that's what you're giving us, but if there's anything you want clarification on from the board at any point, please feel free to reach out, and I can run up the flagpole with the board sooner rather than later, so we don't always have to wait a month till the next meeting kind of thing.
Right.
I'm happy to do that as much as possible.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Okay. All right. If no other business, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
A lot of seconds. All in favor? All right.
We can catch the end of the game, Ron.
Thank you all. We're going to make Patterson Farm a special place in Lower Makefield Township. It'll take some time. It'll take some energy, but it will happen.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good evening.
All right.
Right.